I just finished a great interview with a fellow by the name of Will Reese in Orlando, Florida. Will is a great man with a really terrific story. But first, let me welcome you to Success Saturdays, where we celebrate the entrepreneurial spirit and the successes of the people around us. As I mentioned, Will Reese is the person I want to talk about today. Will grew up in New York City, but then he moved with his family to Florida, where his father found work. He always enjoyed the idea of taking pictures and seeing the world through a lens. But you see, Will had a problem, and that is Will is legally blind. He wears what he describes as Coke bottle glasses. So he was never encouraged. In fact, he was discouraged from pursuing photography in any kind of serious way. Will pursued a number of different jobs, but he ended up as a security guard in the hotel business. He worked there for many, many years, and he'd never traveled outside of the United States. Then in 2009, he decided to do something rather radical, and that is he always wanted to go to Morocco. So he packed up his stuff and he went. He was concerned about the crime that he'd heard about could happen there. So he didn't want to take a good camera. So he just took a little cheap point and shoot camera with him just to capture the things that he saw. What he saw was going to capture him in many different ways because Will Reese fell in love 2 times in Morocco. The first time he fell in love with Morocco itself. The landscape, the beautiful people, the desert, the architecture, all those kinds of things. And he kept thinking, in his words, he said, I thought if I just had a better camera, but he didn't. So he used what he had. I said he fell in love twice. The other time he fell in love with a woman, and she ended up becoming his wife. They spent time in Morocco, and he tried to capture as much of the ambiance and pictures of his wife as he could. Then they moved back in 2009 to Florida, but he brought with him that desire to capture the world on film. In his words, I realized how much I absolutely loved photography, but it was more than just a desire or a love. He also said to me, I felt the need to capture what I saw. So there was this inner need to be able to take what he saw in the world and somehow capture it and put it in a photograph. He'd never been encouraged in his life to pursue his goals, but his wife saw his potential. He also had an aunt who kept encouraging him to say, if you want to be a photographer, you go ahead and go out and do that. But he was still hesitant because he didn't have the background, he didn't have the education, didn't have all those things that you need to have to be a professional photographer. He was cautious. So he did a couple things. Number one is he started reading and researching, and this is going to come up again later. The other thing he did was he approached some photographers and said, can I be your assistant? Can I learn the business from you? They welcomed him and paid him a small amount of money for his help. But he moved up from being an assistant to being what's called the second photographer. You know how oftentimes good photographers have a second one to take pictures of those B-rolls and those pictures that maybe the main photographer isn't capturing because they're doing something else. So he became the second photographer. He didn't make much money, but he was learning. He was getting ready. After 11 years of this, being an assistant and being the second photographer, he took the big step. He broke out on his own. He formed a sole proprietorship and hung out his shingle as a professional photographer, in spite of those Coke bottle glasses, which he still wears to this day. Because of his vision, his wife has to drive him to his photo shoots, but that doesn't hold him up at all. You need to see his work. Just go to his website. I've got the link below because he does such wonderful work. What I love about it is how he actually captures the people. I have a sense of who they are from the photographs he has. Not many photographers can do that. And photography is now his living, and he's so happy with that. So I asked Will, what's the advice you'd give to someone as far as being an entrepreneur? He had a quick response. He said, do research. I said, what do you mean do research? He said, you have to do research into everything. He said he had to do a lot of research into the technical side of photography. He had the eye for it, but he didn't have the technical skill. He said, but you have to do more than that. You have to do research on business, on law, on finance. Those are all things that he was not expert enough in to open a business until he did his research. I asked him what research he does now. He said there's two areas he focuses on. One is contracts and contract law. Why? Because he's had some run-ins with some models and other people about what's said in the contract versus what we said on set. And so he's very clear and very good about having the best contracts, which is a good lesson for all of us. The other thing he said he studies and researches is people. He's always trying to get the best out of people so that he can capture it in that photograph. But he also deals with people in terms of payments and in terms of what they want and how they think he should be taking pictures versus how he wants to see his pictures. I believe Will has a greater lesson in this story. I have a disabled daughter, so my heart goes out to someone like Will, who's disabled, in this case with eyesight, and overcomes that to pursue their dream, particularly his dream of being a photographer when you have bad vision. We all have things holding us back, but only if we let them. The second thing I love about his story is the network of help that he got. And it came in two forms, if you think about it. He had his wife and his aunt who supported him and encouraged him. That's sort of the moral side. But the other thing he needed was he needed the mentorship of someone who was already good and doing this kind of work. So he approached two photographers and said, can I help you? Can I be your assistant? And they were willing to put their arm around his shoulder and shepherd him on the way to becoming a professional photographer, teaching him through experiential learning what it's like and how to get things done. Not just the photography side of it, but also the business side of it. So he's lucky to had two kinds of support, the moral support of his family, but also the professional support of other professionals. He started his journey as a side hustle very late in life. And even then, it took him 9 years to get his business out there as a sole proprietorship. So the other lesson there is it's never too late. If you still have that need, that urge to have a side hustle, to run a business, to make your own decisions, you could be like Will and do it now. It's never too late to start. Please subscribe and like this video if you did, because that allows us to get the story of Will and other people like him out to potential entrepreneurs so that people can pursue their vision and their hopes and dreams.